Hey everybody, this is Mike. Welcome back to the Z Motorsports shop and channel, and we're going to do an updated shop tour today and toolbox tour. It's been about 5.5 years since I've been in this shop, so a few things have changed, but for the most part it's just been a throughput of work. So there have been a few little changes around as far as tools and equipment of where we put them. So let's step outside and kind of give you an overview of the shop, and then we'll come in and I think we'll do the main shop tour first, and then we'll head over to the toolbox and hit the toolboxes, because there's been a few changes as far as tools in there. All right, I apologize for the poor lighting out here. It's end of December here, and we just had a little bit of a snowstorm overnight, so I got all the drive cleared off. But anyway, the shop is 50 deep, 60 wide, 16-foot ceilings. It sits about 45 feet behind our home. We sit on just about 3/4 of an acre. Our neighbor has a shop to the side on the other side of the property line that's I believe his is about 60 deep by about 30 or 32 wide. I also have a 12-foot wide RV parking pad between the shop and our fence. Back when we raced, my thinking was that would be where we would have our enclosed race trailer, but right about the time we bought the house, we completely got out of racing and sold our trailer. But I still do have the spot I put there to make sure I had enough space to where when we do decide to get another enclosed trailer, have space to park it here. The RV bay is 20 wide, 50 deep. It has a 14-foot tall, 16-foot wide door. The other two doors are 12-foot wide. The main shop portion is 40 wide by 50 deep. Again, it's about 45 feet behind the house. It's about 110, 120 feet off the street. There's the backyard. Right now it's just full of snow. But let's go ahead and step inside. As we walk inside, kind of take a quick pan around. And let's go ahead and step over into the RV/storage bay and take a look at in here first. So again, here's the inside of our insulated door. The far west wall, we have our electrical panel, and then nothing down the side here. This is our 40-foot Monaco Dynasty 2003. So it looks pretty good and runs even better for a 21-year-old coach now. This is our pride and joy. We travel around the western U.S. with it. On the back here, I have about 5 feet back, 4.5 to 5 feet back here. My son's summer tires and wheels for his 02 Duramax. I've got a spare radiator for our Jeep, some jack stands, 6-ton and 22-ton, our Quincy 60-gallon, 5-horsepower dual-stage air compressor. On the wall here is our metal storage rack. When I built it, I built some different, spanned the, I don't know what you call them, the spanners from out from the wall. I spread them at a couple of different distances for different lengths. I can put full sticks on top, break them down into 10-footers, and then 6-footers and 8-footers, even down to 4-footers here on these shorter sections. Starting back here at the back, our JD squared tubing bender. I've got dies that go from 1/2 inch up to 1 5/8, I believe it is, from when we was building sandrails, ATV, drag chassis, motorcycles, and then up into roll cages and so forth for race cars and Jeeps. Our Napa transmission jack. I think this is a Westward. It's either OTC or Westward. 10-ton floor jack, floor transmission jack. This got used a lot. This is a Napa one also. This got used a lot before I had our lift in our old shop, so I used the heck out of that for probably 15, 20 years when I was working off of jack stands. I have some sheet material along the back. I have my Mittler Brothers shrinker stretcher combination here. And then I have my M-Tech tube roller that also have got a few different dies on the bottom, and I built a cart for it here a couple of years ago. Our engine hoist. I've got back here on the wall, I have an adapter that goes on the engine hoist for, comes out in cups and holds axles. And I also have an adapter that I made for my transmission jack that'll cradle an axle so I can raise and lower an axle from a vehicle using the transmission jack, the post type. Here I have an OTC / Napa 20/35 ton air over hydraulic. I use the snot out of that whenever we're working on RVs to lift them safely, as well as the 22-ton jack stands down at the end. Behind that on the wall is an adapter I made. At my last shop, I had an adapter bolted to the workbench that I had all my transmission adapters, motorcycle, snowmobile adapters that fit off into it. And when I built the benches in this shop, I didn't want a permanent fixture, so I put receiver hitches at two ends of it. I can show those when we go back into the shop. But I made this adapter that plugs into a receiver, tightens down, and then the adapters for transmissions, small engines, so forth, put into that, and then it's just got quick change handles so I can change positions of them. Next to that is my son calls it the IV tube. It's what we use for motorcycles, ATVs. Back when we was working on them quite heavily, it basically just has a fuel reservoir. I believe it's a Motion Pro fuel reservoir. You can tell it's been heavily used over the years. We would sit that next to the motorcycle or ATV that we was working on, and we could feed fuel to it because we generally was working on them without fuel tanks and so forth on them when we were tuning them in the shop. Next to that is my Brannick 7600 strut compressor. That's a fairly new addition to the shop. I've only had that about 3 or 4 years now. And rather than mount it to the wall and take up wall space, I built a stand for it so that I can wheel it into the shop when I'm using it and then store it over here when I'm not using it. So most everything over in this side in this RV / storage bay is on wheels so that I can take it into the shop when I'm using it and then bring it back over here when I'm not. Just some drain buckets for oil, Blue Point 6-ton jack stands, my 2-ton and 3.5-ton Napa floor jacks, steel, I believe this is RD 600 pressure washer, and then my DI rinse, deionized water setup that I use for washing the coach and occasionally the vehicles, but generally for the coach. And so that is one thing. This is the storage bay. One thing you'll notice if you've watched my first video from 5 years ago, we had a couple motorcycles here. We had mine and my wife's 2010 Ultra CVO, and then my son's, at the time it was a 2012 Street Bob. He had sold it shortly after that video and we built a 2014 Street Glide, but he's recently sold that earlier this spring. And the wife and I ended up following suit and selling ours. So this is the first time in about 18 years we've been without a motorcycle. And at this point in life, I don't necessarily see us going back to them. Matter of fact, I even sold one of my motorcycle lifts. So I'm down to this one motorcycle lift, but I don't see us getting back into bikes. That was, we enjoyed the hell out of it when we did it, but son decided to go a different direction, starting a family, and we followed suit and changed direction. We ended up buying a 5th gen Camaro for our new toy, so I don't see us going back to the bikes. As we come out of the RV bay and into the shop, we'll start here in the corner. I've got our wire rack and our Porta-Power, 10-ton Porta-Power, whiteboard for various projects and so forth. This is all of my metal storage. I've got aluminum. The 2 center sections are for various steels, from round stock, round tube, square, some plate. Then next over here is I don't know, let's just call them specialty metals. I've got some stainless, brass, bronze, copper, things like that over in that one. And then we have some filing cabinets. The first one is actually used as filing cabinets for all my records and so forth. The other 2 are tool storage for, things like my surfacer in the top drawer there, and then some various parts, spare parts and stuff down here. The other ones are welding supplies. So I've got Rolock 3-inch, 2-inch, flat discs, so forth. Then there's more welding supplies down here. And then we get down into some chemicals and some spare headgear and so forth for welding helmets. Let's see, up on top, we've just got some miscellaneous drawers from either Lawson, Curtis, Allied, Dorman, miscellaneous fasteners and so forth that I've collected over the years, absorbent pads, other miscellaneous fasteners from small stainless steel screws to nylon washers to some chrome, wire terminals, bare, heat shrink, some axle fixtures that I fabricated a couple years ago that I've drilled and tapped my fabrication table so I can bolt this down, put an axle in here, clamp it, and hold it rigid enough to where I can cut brackets off and reclock knuckles, add brackets to, and be able to hold the axle solid enough at a certain degree and then set my brackets accordingly, being able to use that as my reference. So these were something I've wanted to do even back when I was building race cars 25 plus years ago. I wanted to do that but never did, and finally a couple of years ago I said enough. I was doing a lot of Jeep axles with custom bracketry and so forth, so I finally broke down and built what I wanted to for years. Here's my MK Products aircraft positioner. I believe this is a Model 3. Yeah, Model 3 aircraft positioner, and then I made a chuck adapter so I could bolt a 3-jaw chuck to it. Some spare bandsaw blades. Behind my welding or cutting equipment here, I've got my grinding racks, some DAs. Above that, I have a couple of engine supports for top struts. This back one's a heavy duty one. That'll hold, I believe, 1,200 pounds, 1,000 or 1,200 pounds on that one. Works great for the diesel trucks. And then the other one, this blue one, is a Napa one. And it works great for front wheel drive vehicles to cradle the engine from the top side when you gotta drop the K-member and so forth off the bottom. There's my old oxyacetylene cutting torch that I still use quite a bit to this day. I'm a Victor fan, so I've got all my cutting tips and rosebuds and welding tips and everything are all Victor. Next to that is my Bailey BS210 mitering head bandsaw. I love this saw. I bought it brand new from Matt at Precision Matthews. He made me a good deal on it and my vertical bandsaw at the same time. I've had this probably seven years now. I think I bought it about the year before we moved and built the new shop. It works great. It's nice because you don't have the whole machine that turns, just the head that turns. With the lever down here, you can lock and turn, hence the term mitering head, but it works great. I love that saw. Next to it is my ESAB 7/8, it's a PCM 875 plasma cutter. Down below I have a Passport, Miller Passport, portable MIG welder, and it takes a small little air rifles used for the CO2 cartridges and so forth. I've got some, I think it's 023 or 030 wire that I keep in it. A couple of extension cords, a heavy duty one for my welders, and then a small, I think it's a 8-gauge one for extension cord. Again, my grinders along the back, my welding hoods. The Miller Elite was one my son and wife got me several years, well, probably 10 years ago now. I'm not a huge fan of electronic helmets, so I generally still use my fixed shades ones, but I just recently bought the Lincoln 3350, probably 6 months ago now, and to be honest with you, I really like that helmet. I never thought I'd say that. I generally don't like things that require batteries, but I do like that helmet. Coming down here to welders, I've got a Miller. As you can tell, I'm a Miller fan. I bleed blue, so I've had Lincolns, Hobarts, and Millers through over the last 35 years of my career, but the last 25, 22, something like that, I've pretty much settled solely on Miller. Their customer support, their products, everything are just second to none. I'm not saying anything bad about the others, it's just my experience with the Miller brand has been above and beyond. When I need a part or I need something, they are Johnny on the spot to help me. So that being said, I've got a Miller 211. This is our newest edition. We just bought this about 3 or 4 years ago when we were working on my son's WJ project. I've got it set up with a, I think it's a 125 size tank of C25 mixture. Next to that is my Miller MM251. Love that welder. It doesn't get used as much as it used to. Most of my stuff anymore is with TIG, but the heavier stuff with MIG, I love that. I run 030 wire, and then I've got a 250 tank, on a 250 CFM tank on the back of it with C25 mixture. And I also outfitted it with a 15-foot gun instead of the 12-foot that it comes with. Next to that is my Miller DX300 DX TIG runner. Fantastic, phenomenal. I bought both of these machines the same year. We had a good year back in about 2007 or 8, I believe it was. And we bought both of those machines that same year, and I love them. They are phenomenal. I've set this one up here about 4 years ago with the CK Flex Lock 230. I like that TIG torch. Before that, I had the Weldcraft Flex Head, and I liked it too, but I really like this Flex Lock. And I use the Superflex cables. Then I have all my various rods in various sizes down the side. The 250 CFM tank on it as well. Plus I have it set up with a purge hose and a secondary gauge off the side of the tank. It's liquid cooled. I also am running the Miller wireless foot control with the dongle. I really like that setup, especially when you're crawling around under a car chassis, something like that. That's just one less wire you've got to worry about. I also have over on my card over here, I also have a thumb controller that I can use that I set up on it. I don't use it as much as I used to, but I still have it there that I can plug it in really quick if I need to. If I can't have access to a foot pedal, whether you're using it between your knees or your armpit or whatever, I still generally try to prefer to use the foot pedal. Next to that is my Baldor bench grinder and wire wheel. This gets used quite a bit. I built the pedestal for it probably 10 years ago when it was still my old shop. It's three stationary points, and then the one back there is adjustable with an Allen wrench so that you can level it up and bring that fourth corner in along with the other three. It works great to make a nice stable base, and I made it a little taller than most of your commercial ones. I'm 6'2", my son's 6'5", and we were tired of being hunched over all the time, so I made the base a little bit taller so you can just walk up to it and stand, and the wire wheel gets used a lot for cleaning threads of fasteners and so forth. And then I have a fairly fine grit stone on it that I use for sharpening high-speed steel for the machining equipment. Down below here I've got a diamond tip surface or a stone grinder. I've got one of the old style spur type and then a stone. I don't use those at all hardly anymore. Coworker turned me onto these diamond tipped ones about 10 years ago, and that's pretty much all I use now. Next to that is my Jet. I believe this is a 20-inch floor model drill press. I like this. This has been a really good drill press. I've had this about 15 years. Again, you can see I added a 6-inch adapter to the bottom to raise the drill press up, so the working height of the table and the chuck is at a much more comfortable level for my son and I. I just got a little brake adapter or a brake line tool here to hold my tool on. I put a light on it. I've got a tray with some common drill bits and some cutting soaps and stuff on the back, brush, and then these quick change or quick clamps. I machined some bases for them that slide into the grooves so you can lock down, and they're very quick rather than using like a T-nut and a bolt. And then also I machined a little base here that works good as a stop, so I can slide it in, turn my vise, and I can use that as a quick stop rather than having to do a bunch of bolting and so forth. So, and this, I believe this is just a Dayton drill vise. I changed from my other one and have this one now. I've just got an old 4-wheel drive knob on it off of my brother-in-law's, I think it was a 73 or a 74 Jeep CJ. So I keep that on there as sentimental reasons. But I've changed over the handles to a more comfort grip rubber handle, but the drill press gets used quite a bit. I did change it over also to a Jacobs, I believe this is 16, yeah, 16N drill chuck, ball bearing drill chuck. Really like the drill chuck in this. Next to that is my Wilton, which is the same as the Delta. This is the industrial 1.5 horse, 12-inch disc, 6x48 belt sander. This is probably one of the most used tools, or pieces of equipment rather, in the shop. Seems like there's always a burr that needs to be knocked off, or a corner that needs to be rounded or something. I keep a 60 grit disc on it, and then 120 grit belt for fine tuning. I built the little water tray on the side. It's just some 3.5-inch exhaust tubing capped. Next to that is my Birmingham. Like I said, I bought this and the Bailey bandsaw at the same time. This is a knockoff of the old Duals bandsaws. I believe they call it a 20-inch, but it measures like 19 7/8 from the throat over here to the blade. It's really a nice bandsaw. I use this quite a bit, and a very welcomed addition to the shop. I had a little Wilton wood/metal one before, and it worked okay for what it was, but it just wasn't rigid enough and solid enough for what I wanted. I don't work in wood in this shop. Everything's metal, so I needed something a little more durable. Right below that is my Union 76 garbage can. It's an old, back on the farm growing up, we used to buy stuff in these 16-gallon drums. So next to that is a fairly new addition to the shop. I've only had this about 4 years. It's a Diacro Model 24. It's a 24-inch finger brake. It'll bend up to 16 gauge. I bought it used. It had some issues. The little stops here on the side being one of the issues, and some of the fasteners were just looked like they put wrenches and stuff on them rather than they got knurls on them. They was made to be used by hand. So but when I bought it, I basically went through and replaced everything that was damaged on it. The nice thing about when I bought it was the fingers themselves were in really good shape. They weren't damaged at all. And then I built a stand for it with adjustable feet and a little tray to hold things there. Behind that, I've got my emery papers, various grits hanging on the wall, my files above my lathe here, my Morse taper drill bits on the back wall on a rack that I made, all my cutting fluids and so forth along the back behind the lathe, chart, inch and metric tap and drill size equivalent chart. Here's my Precision Matthews PM 1340 GT Taiwanese lathe. Love this lathe. It gets used quite a bit. I clean it. I'm anal about keeping it clean when I get done. I've got a full review video on it, so I won't go into a lot of details on it, but I've made different knobs for it. I got rid of all the cheap plastic knobs and put nice machined aluminum knobs and everything, handles and everything on it. Some tools I've made on the back there for basically to adjust the compound angle or compound slide angle and so forth. For tool holders, height gauge. It's quick tool for setting up your height gauge. Is right off the center of the spindle. My T-handles for my various chucks in the back, light. Coming around over here, here's my Precision Matthews Taiwanese PM 935 TV. It's the variable speed head. This is basically a Bridgeport 3 horsepower head, and it's on a smaller body. It's a 9 deep by 35 wide table, so it's probably equivalent to like an old 9 by 36 Bridgeport. And then I built a riser for it to space it up about 8 inches higher for my son and I's height, and it's solid. It really is. It's a Meonite casting, very very good quality. I built the quick change adapter or tool on the top there with the controls here. It's got a digital readout on it. Next to that is my tool cart with all my pin gauges, tap and die, toolbox with various end mills and so forth in it, all my drill chucks, criterion boring heads, everything there. Behind it is my son's Precision Matthews benchtop mill. It's a PM45, and then he's converted it into CNC. He doesn't use it as much as he used to when we first built the shop, but he still does use it, and it's all set up for use there. Here, across from my welders, is my fabrication table. I built this probably 18, 20 years ago. It has a 2-inch receiver here in the end that I can put my, I've got one of those Woodward Fab brakes in it. I can also put my transmission tools that I showed you over in the storage bay in it. Usually when I'm doing a transmission build, I will roll this table. It's on wheels, so I'll roll it over into just in the corner there by my other workbench, so I can stand at the workbench, disassemble the transmission, place the parts here, and then as I rebuild them, they go to the other bench. I've kind of got a system down of how I disassemble, inspect, clean, inspect again, and then reassemble transmissions. So I'll roll this fabrication table over there. So basically I can just turn from one bench to the other, and I'm standing between them, and it works great for efficiency. I did drill a few holes in the top of the table here, some 5/8 inch holes a few years ago. I swore I'd never do that, but I had a particular job in the shop that I think it would have been helped with. So I did drill some, and I'm probably gonna add some more. These are on a 12-inch pattern. I'll probably go to either a 4 or a 6-inch pattern here in the near future. I used to have underneath the big tube roller that I built a cart for over there. So now I have the bottom space freed up. No more clutter and crap underneath the bottom. I have a couple of blocks that I use for welding that I can grab real quick. I generally, when I'm TIG welding, I'm sitting right here on my stool with my foot pedal, and I can TIG weld right here, and I have my 6-inch and my 4-inch Dayton vices that are handy, as well as the blocks. Here I welded a bar. When I built the table, I welded a bar across with all my various 18, 12, and 6-inch, and even down to, I think these are 4-inch, 3-inch vice grip clamps. And then on the back side over here, you never have too many clamps. On the back side here was something I added later on as I started collecting these F-style clamps, and I bought a bunch of these at an estate sale. These Wilton fluorescent, I don't particularly care for the color, but they work good. So I hang them on there. These here clamps I built and machined some ends, and these plug down into the holes in the fabrication table for quick clamping with the vice grip style. And then these are the F style, do the same thing. They drop down into the holes, and they're for quick mounting, jigging, whatever you want to call it, on the fabrication table. And then the others are larger and a small set of smaller F style that are just standard clamps. Here I have my old handy. This is the original handy. This is probably 25 years old. I bought this from a shop that was going out of business. They had a couple of these still in crates. I bought this and used it at my old shop. I also have the side skirts and the extension for ATVs and snowmobiles. That's generally what I used it for back in the day when we were snowmobile racing and ATV racing. I built a lot of sand quads and snowmobiles off of this lift. And I've got the side skirts and everything still over in the storage bay for if I need them, but I don't generally have them on there. Back when we were building bikes, this used to be our long-term project bike chassis, or a bike lift. And then I had a direct lift Cycle Pro, the black diamond plated one. Hated, absolutely despised that lift. I couldn't get rid of that thing fast enough. I had it maybe 7 or 8 years. When we moved into the new shop, I brought it with. Shortly after we got the new shop here built, I sold it, and I bought a Sam 2, which was a little bit longer, and I think it was 2 inches wider and like 8 or 9 inches longer, and it had the flip down at both front and rear, which worked good for dropping tires and so forth out from under bikes. But then this last year, when my son and I got out of working on, well, not say working on bikes, but got out of bikes, sold our motorcycles, I thought about selling both of them, but we ended up selling the newest one, which is the Sam 2, and I kept my original mainly because it had sentimental value. I de-stickered it. I took all the stickers and stuff off it that I had on it, but I kept the original one, and then that way I've got the side extensions and the end tail extension for it. But that's about 25 years old and seen a lot of motorcycles, ATVs, snowmobiles. There's been a lot of shit built on that over the years. Okay, let's continue around. Here I've got a 6-inch bench that I built with a toolbox built into it. It has a lot of my stuff for machining, so it's right here handy from my parallels to my 5C collets. Everything's right here handy. And then taps and dies that I use the most, I just left the trays and stuck them here handy. And then other drawers for machining items. It's cupboard here that has various, my Woodward fab, my radius turner, everything in it. Cupboards above the workbench, LED lights, LED lighting under the workbench, or excuse me, under the cabinets, shining over the workbench. Coming along here, there's my Snap-on Toolbox KRL. I will come back, we'll do a tool video on it. Then we come back over here and we've got another Valvoline garbage can, oil drum / garbage can. And then I have a 12-foot bench by 30 deep, 6-inch on the back turn up, 2-inch on the turn down here on this end. And then again over on that end between the bench and the solvent tank, I have receiver hitches where I can put those transmission adapters in. Generally, I'll use that one over there because it's closest to the solvent tank, but I do have this one as an option. And then my old Wilton vise, this was coming with me from my other shop. When I built my last shop in the early 90s, 92 I believe it was, I bought this brand new back when it was made in the USA, and it's been an excellent vise, and I brought it with me from the old shop. Above that, I have the overhead overhead storage, as well as LED lights under it. Mostly up here are going to be manuals and a few little things, hardware, stuff like that. But a lot of them are manuals for current vehicles, past vehicles, motor manuals. Those of you that have got some age on you, remember that we didn't have the internet back then, so everything was motor manuals or automatic transmissions, auto repairs back in the 80, 84, 6th edition and 8th edition of automatic transmission manuals. And then I go over to my ATSG manuals. I've got quite a selection there of various transmissions that I build over the years. Have a few Chiltons, but not too many. Coming over here, I've got a bunch of other miscellaneous stuff from my Weiss Acura TL, some other motor manuals for heating and air conditioning, some machining tool practices, some weldings. It's great because I got charts and various things that tell you, which rods to use for what and so forth. Stuff that I don't use as often, but it goes up in those. And then this bench, so this bench here is 12 foot. This bench here is 10 foot. So I've got a lot of bench space in this shop, and that's not by accident. I did that on purpose because it seemed like my last shop I had an 8-footer on one side of my toolbox and a 6-footer on the other, and it was never enough. So I want to make sure I didn't have that problem here. Inside the toolboxes are basically, I got a generic drawer here on the top with safety glasses and a few things that are easier to get to, aluminum and soft jaws for the vise. Then as you come over to other ones, I've got hacksaws. I get down to the bottom, I've got all my pullers, I've got all my posi locks, Snap-on tie rod pullers, it's a Snap-on puller set. The next drawer up is there again, a lot of OTC pullers for heavy truck. Snap-on pullers again here, 2-jaw and 3-jaw posi locks. Miscellaneous masking tape, some more pullers over here. This is an OTC dampener puller set, and tie rod, ball joint separator. A couple of these are ones that I've made, different pullers that I've made over the years. And coming over here to this side, this is where I keep some of my diagnostics. I got my AES Wave terminal kit. This works really good. I really like this. This is for various terminals, for back probing wires. They have all the different connectors, so you can hook right up to either your scope So I got a Snap-on Modus Ultra. This is my scope/scanner. I also have an OTC scope with various leads. These are something that I've made years ago that work really well. Sometimes when you're trying to find an intermittent and you need to energize a circuit, it's kind of hard to watch a meter while you're trying to move wires around. So I just bought a couple of these. I think this one I clipped off, and the other two I just bought some blank connectors, put bulbs in them, and then I've got them marked for amperage. So I've got a 2 amp there for a headlight, and I think this is a 1/2 amp. Yeah, half amp and 2 amp for tail lights. And then here's a 4 amp for headlights. That was the headlight one. And so I can plug these into the wires while I'm trying to look for intermittents or shorts or whatever, and I can watch the light flash rather than trying to figure out, watch my meter and watch what I'm doing. Other than that, over here I've just got some miscellaneous, my grease accessory, grease rejuvenator. This got used a ton in my career as a industrial maintenance mechanic. Seemed like between 150 and 200 grease zerks a night when I was a PM mechanic, and there's always half a dozen grease zerks a night that wouldn't take grease. So used that a lot over the years. Setup bearings for differentials, clutch steels and discs, various common used ones from various transmissions and stuff that I've done. Above this workbench is my most used chemicals, brake clean, air tool oil, glass cleaners, Loctites, PB blaster, Croil, a little bit of everything up on top of there. On the back behind the solvent, I've got a ZEP solvent tank. It has the filtration system so that it filters. This is like a large sandbag. It filters through and cleans it. We usually run that a few times a year to clean it, and then I end up changing out the solvent. I don't know, I changed it when we first moved, but it's nice because it does help it last longer. Plus, I'm anal about scraping big stuff off into the garbage before it goes to the solvent tank. Solvent tank gets used a lot in this shop. I'm anal about cleanliness, so I clean parts very thoroughly and very well, blow them, set them on the side tray. I've got an absorbent pad here, set them there, and then I grab my air blower and blow off the parts before they ever go back on the vehicle. But the solvent, I usually can go 4 or 5 years without having to change it out, so it lasts quite well by having that filtration system. Behind that on the wall, I've just got some various soapy water, final inspection, a few things like that I use quite a bit, caulking guns, my common used grease guns. I built this rack here about 4 or 5 years ago. Oil evacuating system, I believe this is Crew Chief. No, John Dow Industries. I bought this one and the 16-gallon drain bucket over there about 11 years ago now when I bought my 2-post lift in my old shop. So those get used quite a bit. I used to use this a lot when I worked on those stinking boats for friends and other clients. I'm not a boat fan, but it's a service I offered to some of my better clients, and because some of them wanted me to work on everything of theirs, from their daily drivers to their lawn and garden equipment to their boats, their snowmobiles. So as much as I hate to admit it, I worked on boats. But I don't enjoy working on boats, but again, I worked on boats. And right next to that is my new gear, 20-ton hydraulic press. I bought that used close to 30 years ago, and it was probably 10, 12 years old when I bought it. I had to rebuild the packing, I had to repack the ram and rebuild the pump. But other than that, it's worked fantastic, and I've loved that press. Got some plaques and stuff up above that my kids have given, my son and daughter-in-law give me for the Jeep. Sand Sports magazine, some of our sand quads were in Sand Sports magazine back in around 2010. My old street rod that I raced and showed back in 97, I think, is when that article came out. My battery chargers. I'm not big on battery operated tools, as you'll see when we get over to the toolbox, but I do have a few that I use. I'm still old school. I still prefer air over battery powered stuff. any day of the week and twice on Sunday. So next to the press, I've got a stand that I made that has various dies and whatnot in it for pressing, to press or receive. Derm drawers, I have a lot of general items in here, everything from like axle shims. I build a lot of axles, so I've got everything from various pinion, carrier, shims, ring gear bolts, so forth in there. Things that are readily available. Then I come over here to like the engine side. I've got various, so the Duramax lower hose O-rings, Duramax return line seals, other common use stuff like drain plug gaskets and so forth. I'm anal about replacing the drain plugs, gaskets on drain plugs and torquing them. A bunch of Adele clamps. So some large trays. I've got 2 full-size 3/4 ton pole jacks, and then I have 2 of the same thing that I cut down for working on axles on the lift. And they work really good because that way I can put one underneath and tip the axle a little bit. So if I'm pulling an axle shaft or doing ball joints or something like that on one side, I don't have to worry about the oil coming out, so I can just tip one side of the axle and can it to the side with one smaller pole jack. Before I get any further, here's my AMCO 10,000 pound symmetrical lift, but it's got, they call it a 2-in-1 because it has the shorter triple stage arms in the front and the longer dual stage for the rears. So I can pick up, I can use it basically as an asymmetrical or a symmetrical. At the time I bought this back in 2011, I believe it was, 2010 or 2011. And it was, I believe it was come out of the same factory as the Challenger Versalift. The Versalift had the arms that folded, both of them folded back, whereas this one folds forward, one folds back. But it's been a great lift. I've had it, like I said, for 11, 12 years now, and it's been a great lift. When I built the shop, I had power dropped from the ceiling, and then when I run my airlines, I run airlines over to drop so I can put an air hose coiled on the side. I've got to put a double pole, single throw switch so I can kill power to it. Coming around over here, I've got 3 Imperial, I think they're Imperial, Global Industries. I have 3 lockers and then a space where I have my steel shop vac, my coolant recycling machine, my battery charger, and then I have another one. That one over there has all my oils, fluids, things like that in it, some shop towels up above. This one over here has sanding, abrasives and so forth in it. Some replacement roll-locks, down the bottom shelf, drain pans, convoluted casing, buffers, grinders, metric and SAE, helicoil sets. Next cabinet over is a lot of my big blow molded stuff. So I've got everything from my Blue Point pneumatic brake bleeder. I use that a ton. Windshield repair kit. This I use a lot. This is an Arizona transmission and machine universal bearing installer. I bought this about 5 years ago as a gift to myself because I'd wanted one for a while, and when I built and finally got my shop built, I held off buying this until I got my new shop built. This was one of the first big purchases I made after the new shop. You have different adapters that you can use, lengths, different size drivers for pushing bearings. They work great for manual transmissions, a little bit on automatic transmissions, but even like for rear ends, you can use the longer one and you can push press bearings. I'm not a big, I don't like hammering on bearings, but you can press the bearings down on and the pinion will come up through the shaft, seals, so forth. So I use this quite a bit. I really like that. Behind that I've got a big reciprocating saw, and then I've got my Midtronics battery tester, Viper adapters for the coolant machine over here, my Hogan mag drill, some various other odds and ends, but Rimac tester, use that a ton when I was building race engines for setting up valve springs and cylinder heads, and then also used it for snowmobile clutch tuning when we were hill shooting and hill climbing with snowmobiles and a little bit of sand drag racing. But I was using that so I could set up, so I could determine spring pressure rates, installed heights, and so forth. But I used that Rimac tester a lot back in the day. Not so much anymore, but who knows, maybe again someday. Next to that is various other oil filters and stuff like that for our personal vehicles, K&N cleaners, rapid tap, polishing compounds, again more Duramax filters. I've also got some fast primary and secondary filters, pinion depth tools, which is a Kent Moore snap-on ball joint press, BJ1, best ball joint press money can buy. Use the shit out of that. Before I had that, I had the OTC one, and the OTC one worked okay, but it seemed like adapters were just, it seemed like he was always fiddle farting around trying to get the right adapter. But that snap-on ball joint press, I've had it about five years or so now, and I use the snot out of it and love it. And coming back around over here, I've got some various air hoses and extension cords hanging on the wall here on a rack that I made, and then Oregon lawnmower blade balancer. This sets in here, you put the blade on, these are magnets, and it holds it, and you want to balance the blade out by removing metal from the heavy side until basically that just stays balanced. You can use this little gauge to come out and turn it and make sure the blade's not bent, but that's fairly recent. I've only had that maybe a year or so. And coming around over here, this is probably the first piece of actual shop equipment, big shop equipment that I bought. And I bought this back in the early 90s, 91, 92, when I built my first shop. I was doing a lot of restoration work and straight rods and race cars and stuff. And it seemed like I was always bead blasting a bracket for paint or one thing or another. And I bought this from our Mac dealer at the time. It was brand new. It's a 36 wide, 24 deep glass beading cabinet. And that's all I've run in it is glass beads. So again, this is 31, 32 years old now. And I've switched it over to a foot pedal, and drilled a hole inside, put the fitting here, and then the water separator. I think I've had to change the gloves in it 2 or 3 times. I think I've used scat abrasives when I've gone to that. I think that's where I bought the foot pedal conversion, and I bought their gloves. But it's got the vacuum chamber on the sides. I don't use this as much, but I still use it quite a bit. It seems like if I'm, oh hell, just for example, my son was working on his WJ the other day and just doing a normal service on it, and the bracket by the front that holds his oil cooler on was looking a little corroded, so he pulled it off, bead blasted it, painted it, put it back on. So we still use it, but not nearly. There was times where I'd be standing in front of that cabinet for an hour, 2 hours a night, but it doesn't get used that much. Maybe a few hours a month, but it still gets used. And I just put fresh glass beads in it when we built the shop here 5.5 years ago, and I just changed them a couple weeks ago because I noticed they were not cutting real good, so I put some new crushed glass in them. So, and then as far as the shop itself, I've got 9 air drops down. I use the Aircom aluminum tubing. So I've got a dual manifold in 9 different locations. Well, I'll tell you about 7, I've got the duals, and then I've got 2 airdrops. I've got an airdrop over my man door, and I have an airdrop over on the lift. But other than that, I've got 7 of these dual air manifold drops, and then I have a dual drop in the RV bay back by the compressor, which works good so I'm checking checking tire pressures on the coach, or working on the coach or whatever over there, I've got air. This is the wife and I's new 5th gen Camaro. I've got the cover on it, so there'll be some more videos coming on that. We've only had this a few months now, four months maybe, and it's a clean car, but I'm gonna be doing a full paint correction on it, and I've been working on getting it zeroed out with fluids and filters and everything. Had 60,000 on it when we bought it, but the wife wanted to replace the Harley with another toy, so this is our new toy to play with. So like I say, there'll be some more videos coming on that. So, okay, so that's basically the shop. Again, it's 40 wide, 50 deep. So let's head over to the toolbox and we'll do a detailed toolbox tour now. Okay, before I forget, this is an old Snap-on, just as regular service cart, tool cart is what we used to call them. I've had that about 25 years. On the end over here is a Mac aerosol holder. I bought that about the same time frame. This is probably one of, next to my disc sander, this is probably one of my most used tools in the shop, because it seems like it's always by my side. I've got my most common used aerosols from Powerhouse to fluid film to Croil, brake cleaner, shop towels at the bottom, and it seems like I'm always, if I'm working on a car, tools are going right here, easily accessible. I've got you'll see in my sockets over there, most everything's on magnet trays, so I can set them here, have my sockets and everything within reach. If I'm working on something, big parts, stuff go underneath as I'm pulling them off the vehicle, but it's always next to me. I needed another one for a while, and I've been trying to, you can't buy this particular Snap-on cart new anymore, so I've been trying to find a replacement. And it's a little frustrating because what I've seen on eBay is they list them as antique or vintage. I don't consider myself vintage. I bought that sucking thing brand new, so I don't consider myself vintage, but everything I'm finding is vintage and beat to hell. So I've been looking for a while so I could have two of them. So if I'm working on one thing and something else comes in the shop, I don't know if it's my OCD or what it is, but I've got to have that cart next to me when I'm working. And if it's loaded up with tools on another project and I need it for one that's a quick one coming in, it drives me up a freaking wall. Again, I don't know if it's my OCD or what it is, but I need that tool cart next to me. So I wanted to duplicate it and I couldn't. So I ended up, the closest one I could find is a Sunex model, and it's the same exact physical sizes. The Snap-on one has squared off handles. The Sunex one has rounded, but I could not find, I looked for Matco, they were the ones that made that side aerosol tray. I couldn't find it. I contacted both of them. They said it's been discontinued. I tried looking for a while on eBay. I found one that was vintage, and the guy was out of his freaking gourd what he wanted for it, so I just ended up making one. I copied the other one's dimensions and just built one, and to be honest with you, I think it looks just as good. I just was trying to find original Snap-on and Mac to duplicate my cart. So anyway, I've got two carts now, so long story short, my OCD is much happier now. Okay, walking up to my toolbox, this is my Snap-on KRL. I believe it's a 1023. Don't quote me on the model numbers. It's not the Epic series, it's the KRL, but it's the bottom, top, and then I got the side locker. The side locker has shelves and then the 3 drawers in it. So I bought this back in 2006, I believe it was, and I bought it brand new. A friend of mine from high school on the automotive team was actually my Snap-on dealer for a couple of years, and he was going out of business, and he wanted to help me out getting a new toolbox. I had a Mac prior to that, and he knew I'm only traditional red. He had ordered this in, and he ended up making me a really good deal on it. I'm nothing against those who like all the funky colors. I'm just a traditional red fan. I like just pure classic Snap-on red. So my cart, Snap-on red, I had to duplicate it, with as close as I could get, and red toolboxes in my benches. I'm a red fan as far as toolboxes go. So walking up to this side locker, thread chaser, Snap-on coolant pressure tester, air hammer, digital timing light. I used to use that a ton on when I was building race engines and cars and everything, but I don't use it too much anymore. Pressure, compression, Snap-on compression gauge, Snap-on cylinder leakage testers, Imperial Eastman. I've used that a ton. That is probably one of my favorite. Next to my Master Cool, this is probably my favorite flaring tool. is this Imperial Eastman. Used this a ton over the years. It's gotten the snot used out, as you can tell. The box is getting pretty hammered. But yeah, this has been great. I've used this for everything from sand rails to race cars to Jeeps to you name it. Back behind there's a brake pressure tester. Then I come down below and I've got, which one is this here? Oh, that's my Deutsch service terminals. A Mac tap and die set, which is very similar to the one over in my under my bench over here, but I don't use it very often. My big boy pry bar. Let's see, extra drill bits, rotary burrs. These are fairly recent purchases. I haven't used them much yet, but my other ones were getting kind of worn that I keep back here in the tray, so I wanted some replacements. Cool tools. These work really good for doing AN fittings on steel braided hoses. Just some heat gun, electric die grinder. Don't use that a ton. I'm an air tool fan, so I usually grab my air tools. An electric shear, 3/8 drill. Over in my cupboard over there, I have a couple of the old Magnum hole shooters. Love those, the 1/2-inch drill. That's one of the best drills ever made. Down here, I've just got some miscellaneous, a couple new pairs of TIG gloves, all my tin snips, straight, angled, high leverage, normals, some various Scotch-Brite roll lock attachments. Coming over here to the toolbox upper section, I've got my 1/2-inch snap-on tech angle. And then these top two drawers are just miscellaneous items, from valve grinding tools to flywheel pullers and installers for motorcycles, a lot of Banshees, Suzukis, Hondas. I think these in here, I believe this in here is a Honda 250 ATV, 4 tracks. Worked on a lot of ATVs over the years. This in here is miscellaneous. I've got some gaskets for my Jeep with the LS, 6.2 LS in it. I've got manifold exhaust gaskets there, some miscellaneous items. This is going to be my slide hammer, miscellaneous bushings. I've got a small bushing driver set. It's Mac, snap-on, a little bit larger bushing driver set. Let's see, pullers for axle, wheel bearings, miscellaneous slide hammers from pilot bearing, seal pullers. There's a Lyle adjustable seal puller here. You can see, change the angle on it. And then I've got a older Mac seal puller that I don't use as often. A couple of Old Forge and Mac slide hammers for pilot bushing and seal pullers. Next drawer down is going to be torquage. So I've got an older snap-on tech wrench, and then the tech angle, snap-on micrometer style 1/2-inch, split beam 3/8. These two, this 3/8 split beam, and the snap-on micrometer 50 to 250. These are probably a couple of my oldest torque wrenches. They're probably 25 years old now. I just had them recalibrated here about 6-8 months ago. Some centrals these here I kept in my race trailer when we were racing and everything, but since we sold that, I can't seem to sell tools or get rid of them, so they just moved here into the box. Armstrong 50 to 200 inch-pound torque wrench. This is a cute little thing, and gets used not a ton, but there are times where you need valve cover gaskets, things like that. You need down in the 20-30 inch-pound range. Here's another one. That was a 3/8 drive. This is a 1/4 inch drive. Same thing. This one goes 5 to 50 inch-pounds, Matco. This gets used a shit ton. My Proto dial torque wrench. This is used for checking rotating torque on pinions for preload. Use the snot out of that. This I don't use as often, but I used to use this quite a bit back in the day, and this is, many people don't realize that there was such a thing, but this is my snap-on torque screwdriver. And this I used a lot when I was working on Holley carburetors, because the float bowls, I believe they were like 7 or 9, can't remember what it was, 7 or 9 inch pounds. It wasn't much. So that was what I used for a lot of carburetor work and so forth. Before the tech angle wrenches come into play, I've got an old snap-on torque angle gauge that you'd set up on the torque wrench. So you'd torque it to spec, and then you'd set whatever angle you needed to go to from there. Don't use that as much since I got my torque angle wrenches the last few years. Some other spanner wrenches. This 3/8 Mac inch-pound torque wrench goes up to, I believe, 250 inch-pounds. This one has sentimental value. This is my old good friend and mentor, Rich. I bought that from him probably 20 years ago. He was upgrading, and I bought this one from him. That's got sentimental value. I use that still quite a bit, and it brings a smile every time I use it, because I remember my good friend and mentor that I looked up to all these years. Below that's my electrical drawer. So I've got some old ignition module testers, node lights, vacuum tester for checking vacuum advance, and so forth on distributors. I've got an old amp clamp back there, Power Probe. I believe this is model 3 or 4. Model 3, I believe it is. Use this quite a bit, especially like when I'm wiring up trailer controllers, trailer brakes, things. It works great for checking relays and so forth, where you can power certain circuits that you want to power, but yet still protect them. Infrared gun, Raytech infrared gun, no, it's Weller. Gas soldering gun. Magnifying glass. The wife got me a few years ago. I was having a hard time looking at the numbers on some of the carburetors I was working on, and she got me, I guess my eyes are getting old, so she got me a magnifying glass. I've got an old Supco capacitor tester there. I believe this is a Lyle or a, no, this is a, Leica. Battery, and for checking batteries and coolants. Fluke 87. This has been my go-to meter for years and years and years. I just recently bought this snap-on EEDM 525, their meter. I really like this meter, actually. I just bought it here a year ago, maybe not quite that, and I really like it. It's nice. It's got a nice big display, very nice big display. It's got a stand, so it stands up, so you can stand it up and you can see it from across the hood very easily. And it works great outside where it's got the backlit. The only thing that my complaint is Snap-on, get your shit together and make some decent freaking leads. I ended up taking the leads off my Fluke and putting over on this, and then took the new Snap-on leads and put them over on my Fluke. But my hell, in all these years, follow Fluke's lead and make some leads, for crying out loud. Your leads suck, Snap-on. Get your shit together. Here's some measuring stuff. I've got telescoping gauges, up to 6 inch micrometers. These get used quite a bit. Small hole gauges, screw thread micrometers for measuring screw threads. Then the next couple drawers up are motorcycle specialty tools, so for like steering neck bearings, an installer, and removal tool, small brake caliper tool, Mazda rotary. I had a 13B that I built for my sand rail, so that's a little tool for checking the coolant system pressure. You could pressurize it. It's got a gasket on it. You could pressurize it and check for coolant leaks between the wipers and the seals and the rotors. This got used a lot back when I was building a lot of snowmobiles and motorcycle engines. For setting up for top dead center and figuring out where to measure for squish angle and squish and similar head volume. This is for the big pinion nuts on the Type 1 through, I believe, the IRS Volkswagen transaxles. Building some of those for when I was building sandrails. I was using the Rhino cases and welding the gussets on the back side, and that pinion nut, we was using the chromoly, the 4140 chromoly nuts. That socket worked great for setting those up and setting the ring and pinions up in them. Works good for setting the rings down a certain way off the deck to set them down in to make sure they're square in the bore for checking your piston ring end gap. My pressure gauge for setting up nitrogen shocks. Harley Davidson, I believe this is the big axle ratcheting wrench. Harley Davidson, I think this is the twin cam. Yeah, both of these are twin cam inner bearings and inner cam removal bearing and installer tools. Circlip tools, twin cam bearing install tool. Crankshaft installation tool for seals. Let's see, got a tachometer here. I use this quite a bit actually. This is the Strandix tachometer. I also have an ES digital one here that has a inductive clamp. This is for setting up it's a buzz box for setting up points on motorcycles, because you had to put a small amount of current through them to check the point system. Here's an old spot for using for snowmobiles. I use this a lot, but also dirt bikes and ATVs, strobe style timing light. And then some miscellaneous paperwork and so forth on the next couple of drawers, just some miscellaneous stuff. Let's see, coming down, this is the big one, socket drawer. Most of my stuff in here is got some age on it, but I do have a couple of fewer newer purchases. I have mine set up for my snap-on extensions here in the middle. Everything left of it's SAE, right of it's metric. Unfortunately, I work on such a wide variety of things here in my shop that I can't say that I need only metric or only SAE. I work on everything from, I used to work on farm equipment and everything for neighbors in the past, where we lived in the past, to golf carts, to, Volkswagens and a lot of modern stuff, but I work on a little bit of everything, so I need what I need, I guess. So a couple of my earlier purchases, like I said, I've been wrenching since 1988 when I became a professional mechanic as an industrial maintenance mechanic, and automotive was my main line, but I figured I could make better money and have better benefits going the industrial maintenance line, so I went into the industrial maintenance field and used automotive as my passion. So a lot of these tools I bought while I was working, but as an industrial maintenance mechanic, but I've had to buy two because I had a work set and a home set. Well, my son now has my work set, so this is strictly my home shop now, but all my stuff that I had at work I gave to my son. So there's been a few things I've changed as I've upgraded some of my tools here. I've given my son some of my other ones. But this is Cornwell 1/2 inch deep and Cornwell semi-deep 3/8 and Cornwell semi-deep metrics. These were a few of excuse me, the first socket sets I ever bought back in 88, 89, followed by this set of Mac 1/2 inch drive deep metrics, and then from there I moved over to basically started filling in the gaps. I've got a set of 1/2 inch snap-on wobblies that I've had for about 25 or so years. A couple of them I've recently replaced under warranty, which I got a great snap-on guy now. He's been warrantying some tools for me that are, oh man, that are 25, 30 years old, and he's warrantying them for me. So he's been awesome. This back set is 3/4 inch drive, and it goes from, I believe, 3/4. It goes from 3/4 up to 2 inch, and that is a Napa set. But it's back when Danaher was making all the Napa's tools. So it's an excellent set. It's made in the USA, and again, it's Danaher. These have been used quite a bit. Made in the USA. That's 1 5/16. Like I said, I bought this set used, but I think the guy must have used one socket, and then he passed away, and I ended up buying them from his widow. That's about an $800 set of wrenches, and I was honored to be able to purchase those for pennies on the dollar, and that's been a good set. Behind that is all my OTC large axle sockets, a bunch of specialty sockets. There's 4-wheel drive sockets here. These are Polaris and Arctic Cat clutch, snowmobile clutch sockets, Polaris drive nut sockets. Don't use those too much anymore, but back when we were building snowmobiles, they get used a lot. 4-wheel drive Dana 44 GM 10 bolt front axle, axle bearings, and then these are used for degreeing in engines. You'd slide this on the crankshaft snout where it's keyed, and then you put your degree wheel on, and I had the big 18-inch degree wheel because I felt like it was more accurate. So, but you could put that on there, and that way you could take the socket and the timing wheel on and off the engine without having to work around it. My large snap-on pry bar, some long extensions, my long 3/4 extendable ratchet, speeders, which yes, those are really a thing, and I still use this 3/8 one a lot. The 1/4-inch one, not so much. It's an old snap-on one. Both these are snap-ons. I've had them probably 30 years. I don't use the 1/4-inch one too much these days. I use them a lot back on snowmobiles and small engines, lawn and garden equipment, but they still get used. Sockets, these are old snap-on 13/16, 5/8. Then I get over here, I got some long Allens. These are fairly recent purchases. These are triple square drives for Volkswagen and Audi. I did work on a Volkswagen Touareg here a while back, and I needed to make sure I had some triple squares. Then moving forward over here, swivel snap-on 3/8, snap-on Allens, Proto deeps, and Matco shallows in 1/4, SAE, Cornwell semi-deep impacts, snap-on shallow chrome, snap-on chrome deeps, Proto 1/2-inch drive chromes shallows, and then snap-on 12-point metric and 12-point SAE. I use these quite a bit because I used to use a lot of ARP fasteners. Still use a lot of ARP fasteners. So ARP is mostly prevalent as 12-point. So I wanted good. I just recently had a few of my more worn ones warrantied out by Snap-on, but these are both Snap-on 12-point sets. 13mm swivel, 13mm. Those are on the Jeeps for the unit bearings, necessity square drives. These are Carlisle's. These purchased probably 4 or 5 years ago. They're actually a pretty decent set. I've been impressed. Carlisle deep 1/2-inch drive, and then 12-point. I believe these are Proto, older Proto 12-point shallow 1/2-inch drive. Then coming over, I've got Matco crow's feet. These again are Danaher 3/8 drive wobblies and Danaher 1/2-inch drive shallow impacts. These are all Danaher from 20 years ago. Torques, inverted Torques. These are all Snap-on. Proto metric chrome shallows. Danaher 3/8 wobbly impacts. Danaher metric shallow impacts. Barring tool, Duramax crankshaft bolt and locking pawl, Matco swivels metric, shallow. I believe these are Cornwell, or not Cornwell, Carlisle. These shallow, yeah, Carlisle shallow impacts. Metric standard length Allens are Snap-on, Snap-on metric. Proto deep, Cornwell semi-deep, Snap-on shallow, 3/8, Snap-on chrome 3/8, 1/2-inch metric, Snap-on wobblies. These are a fairly new set. I've only had these maybe 4 or 5 years. Carlisle 1/2-inch drive metric, Mac 1/2-inch drive deep, And then the rest of these are Danaher up to 32 millimeter. 33 was an oddball one I had to buy, Ascot, made in Taiwan. And then the 34, 5, 6, and 38 were all KD. And then some miscellaneous sockets for like adjusting the Terraflex ball joints and tie rods. Stretch belts for GM, tool, removal and installation tool. So a little bit of everything in there. Moving down to my wrench drawer. Again, everything left is SAE, right's metric. I've got my standard snap-on combination wrenches that I've had for probably 25 years. And then the gear wrench snap-on that I bought probably 8 or 10 years ago in SAE and a year or two later in the metric. The box offsets snap-on SAE Matco. This is my first set of actual ratcheting wrenches. You flip them over. They're a straight head. I think it's a 15 degree on the other end. I like them, other than you got to watch where you use them, because if you ratchet something on, you need to make sure you can get the wrench off, because you can't reverse it. So I learned the hard, don't ask me how I learned the hard way on that, but those are Matco. I bought those SAE and Matco metrics at the same time. I've had those probably 15 years. They've been great. I haven't had to warranty them or anything. Snap-on stubbies, gear wrench, no, Blackhawk stubby ratchetings. I like ratcheting wrenches, but I'm a firm believer in breaking them loose with a combination wrench, fixed head first, then go into the ratcheting side, because I've got coworkers, I've got friends that they'll bust those ratcheting gear wrenches. If you look at them wrong, they'll break them. They're constantly breaking them, and they're trying to break loose tight fasteners with the ratcheting end, and I just don't think that's the way they're made. I buy quality tools so I can have them warranted, but I don't necessarily want to test out the warranty on every frickin' tool. I like tools to last, and I want to treat them as such. I did buy some extra long zero offset gear wrench, SAE and metric, those have been a fairly recent purchase. I've had those maybe 4 or 5 years. I actually kind of like those. I'm not a big crescent wrench fan, but I do have some Snap-on and Blue Point crescent wrenches. Torque adapters, these get used quite a bit, especially like in running overheads and so forth on diesel engines. Those are nice to offset. Matco hydraulic wrenches is what I've always called them. They're just an offset wrench. Metric box end offsets. Metric adapter, torque adapters. These are Mac stubbies, and then the Blackhawk metric gear wrenches. Snap-on gear wrenches, Matco, and then I've got my main wrench set on metric goes from 8 millimeter up to 19, and then I bought 20 through 24 for the larger size. And then I've got my metric and SAE line wrenches, tubing wrenches back there. Moving down next is screwdriver drawer, pick set. These are a fairly recent purchase. These are for O-rings. They work great. They've got these nice smooth little paddles. Up until that point, I always used a pick set to use for O-rings, but after nicking a couple and seeing that the Snap-on did come out with these little paddle style, I bought these here about a year ago, and I really like them. They've worked out real well. Vessel JIS screwdrivers, those are a necessity if you're working on any Japanese motorcycles or ATVs or anything. I do like the Instinct Snap-on handles, but I really like the old square hard handles. So this set of Snap-on red handled ones was ones I used back when I was an industrial maintenance mechanic back years ago. And then I bought the Instincts probably 10, 12 years ago, and then I recently bought this set of Caterpillar ones that I found online, and they're the exact same handle. I believe they're made by the same company, but the Williams. They're all basically the Snap-on. They're the same shank, same everything other than the handles say Cat on them. Some of my old Snap-on ones, these are the very old, like back from the 70s and early 80s. I bought this set used back in the 90s. I bought this set used, and it's been a great set. I used that for quite a while until I bought these red hard handle, the next generation ones. A lot of old tools back in here for things like Holly, float bowl, adjusters, Zeus fastener tools for Zeus panels on cars, magnets. There's a Blue Point flexible magnet, a couple of Blue Point and Mac extendable magnets, spark plug gap tool. So plier drawer. I really like these Comfort Grip snap-on handles. These actual Napa hand tools, these extra long reach ones, those are kind of nice. I bought those not knowing if I'd ever use them or not, and I've used them more than I thought I would. Let's see. I like this set of wire crimpers and strippers from Snap-on. Knipex hose clamp pliers, I really like those. My flush cut Snap-on and flush cut Knipex, use those quite a lot. I just bought these recently, these chrome Snap-on, the two sets of vice grips. I like these. They don't have this in the end here in the handle. They don't have the form rolled end. They're actually a machined thimble that's pressed in and TIG welded and machined, and then the end bolt has an Allen in it so you can torque it down. These are really solid and well-made vice grip. I really like those. This is for pulling the chrome caps off of heavy truck and RV. They're plastic dip coated so you don't scratch them. Mac, Proto, channel lock style pliers, Knipex, Dykes, Snap-on, Knipex. These are really good for, I bought these for cables when I was doing a lot of motorcycle cables and so forth. Actually, this is my second set. They warranted the first set. The first set I actually used quite a bit for doing door cables when I was as an industrial maintenance mechanic, doing door cables, overhead doors. I use those a lot, and they actually warranted them with a new set. And seeing as how I don't wrench at work anymore, those come home. Needle nose. This is probably one of my favorite wire crimpers. These do a really good job. Mac cable cut, battery cable cutters. These work really well for pulling hoses on and off. I believe these are Matco. Yeah, these are Matco. These work good for pulling hoses on and off of fittings. I've got three different sizes, three most common sizes there for hoses. Here's my measuring drawer. So I've got tape measures, micrometers, inside and outside up to 1 inch micrometers, dial caliper, thread pitch gauges, Mitutoyo, Starrett digital caliper. I don't use that a ton. I usually use my Starrett dial. Let's see, I believe this is my depth gauge. Yep, that's my depth micrometer, Starrett. I recently bought this Snap-on set of feeler gauges. They're the go, no-go standards and 45s, and then they have the quick release on these handles. I really like these. These will be nice for like running overheads and so forth. Only thing I wish they would have done differently is put some kind of mark indicator on either the end out here or somewhere along there to identify them, so that as you're laying there on your head in the back of an engine bay in an RV or something, and you've got one set up for, like, say on the Cummins, you got one set up for, say, 12,000 for the intake and one set up for 22,000 for the exhaust, you can tell by a quick indicator, like maybe and I'll probably do is I'll probably take some blue painter's tape and put on the intake one, so I know that's, so you check it, set it aside, and then when you go to grab it again, you don't have to look at it to see which one it is. You can tell quickly whether you're grabbing the intake or the exhaust. But anyway, that's my only complaint with these, is I think they should have done some kind of an indicator, but nothing a piece of blue painter's tape won't take care of. Here's a long set of feeler gauges. These work really well. These are Mac. These work really good for when I was setting up ignition coils and on small engines. So you could take this and lay it across the flywheel and then move the coil down and catch both sides of that coil against the flywheel magnets at the same time, rather than having to stick one up one side, snug the screw, stick this one up the other side, snug the screw, and then go back and forth to check it. This one, you take a 12, 14 thousandths feeler gauge, lay it up in there, push the coil down, hold it, tighten both screws, and you're done. One and done. Some brass feeler gauges. This is a Cummins tool for setting up the Jake brake on a Cummins engine. Some other feeler gauges, angled. Got a lot of feeler gauges. So that's your Mac. I believe this is Snap-on also, but an older one. All USA made. Some Noga deburring tools and so forth. Starrett center punch, another Noga deburring tool. Moving down to, this is a heavy big fill drawer. It's all my impacts. Again, I'm still an air tool fan. I don't know. I have a couple of battery powered tools, but I'm not the fanboy, the battery powered fanboy that a lot of people are. When I buy tools, I don't want to buy something that's got a designed obsolescence into it. But I did splurge and buy this Snap-on drill and 3/8 gun a couple years ago, and I really liked them. They worked out really well. So then, since then, to use the same 14-4 battery system, I bought the 1/4 inch extended reach and the 3/8 long neck. And I do use those quite a bit. I will admit I do use those. If I don't have the air out and I'm doing something, I'll grab those first. If I already have the air out, then I will generally grab an air tool. A couple of my favorites. This is the 325. I used to have the IM31. I give that to my son. I wore 2 of those IM31s out. I love that. It seemed like whenever, I bet you 8 out of 10 times, that was the gun I had in my hand, was that Snap-on IR31. I replaced it with a 325 about 7, 8 years ago. I really like this gun, but I do use the battery-powered one a little bit since then. Let's see what else. I like this Snap-on 1/4 inch drive impact, but to be honest with you, I much prefer my Mac 1/4 inch impact. I like it because the switch for the head is down here, not up here where you're going to bump it, and it just seems it's nicely balanced. I usually will reach for that one. Snap-on die grinders, 90 degree and straight. This is my Snap-on 3/8 drive impact. That's my knuckle buster. You better have a hold of that if you're doing U-bolts or something like that on the front axle or whatever on a vehicle, and you grab that, you best have a hold of it, because if not, it's going to spin around and slam your knuckles into whatever is in the way. So I like that ratchet, but you need to respect it. Dynabrade sander. I recently bought this Ingersoll Rand 3/8 drive impact 90 degree for a specific job. I used it. I really liked it, but I haven't used it much since. But I do like that. An old needle scaler, Mac sawzall, a little pneumatic saw, and then I've got a long reach Mac die grinder. Let's see, my big Napa 3/4 drive impact. This gun is great. I had a Snap-on one, I liked it, but when they come out with this titanium Ingersoll Rand, a 2235, I bought it. I've had this probably 15 or 17 years now, and that is still one of my go-to guns. Along with my Snap-on one for smaller fasteners, that 1/2 inch one is, I love that thing. It's balanced well, it's not as heavy as it looks. I really like that titanium gun. Now, when I was doing airbags, air springs under our coach, I got thinking about it. I ended up buying this Onyx by Astro. It's a stubby 1/2 inch. I really like this. I've used this on several jobs since. I did some axle work on an old square body, like a 76, I believe it was. Don't quote me. I think it was a 76. I did axles and so forth on. And I grabbed that, and oh my heck, it worked fantastic. I really like that stubby 1/2 inch. I also have a stubby 3/8 that works good for doing like Jeep axles when you're trying to get the unit bearings and so forth out. This is a Carlisle. It's an inexpensive gun, but it works well. I've used it quite a bit. A couple of my older Snap-on and Ingersoll Rand die grinders that I still use quite a bit. I've got different thickness wheels set up on the 200. I've got the 035 wheel, and then I believe my Ingersoll Rand, I have a 16th, and then my other Snap-on, I have an 1/8 inch thick grinding wheel on. Here's a little 1/4 inch impact. This is a Blue Point one. I use this quite a bit on, I've got a little wobbly flex end on, connector on it. I use this quite a bit for small engines, lawnmowers, snowblowers. Below that's my hammer drawer, pry bars, old set of Snap-on pry bars, heel bars, drilling hammer. I did recently purchase this anti-vibe small hammer to replace my old channel lock, I believe it was, hammer, and I really like that anti-vibe. That's nice. This hammer is a bronze one. I had the original one that was one probably my first Snap-on purchase, was the old style, more square head. And about 1.5 years ago, the damn thing broke. I was working on the rear end of a Ford 8.8 in a 2018 Ford F-150, and I went to drive the pinion out, and the freaking handle come apart. So my Snap-on dealer was nice enough to replace it, but he had to replace it with a newer style. So, and it's not that I don't like the handle, it's just that I don't know, that old one had sentimental value, I guess. So most of my hammers are Snap-on. I do like their composite bodied hammers. Lower drawer down here is big stuff. I got the big Cobra, Knipex Cobras, 18 and 24 inch Matco and Crescent wrenches. My big wrench set goes up to 2 inch. These are for emergency brake cables. They work really well. Don't use them a ton, but they do work well. My crimpers for battery cables. 4-wheel drive hub puller, and then these I use quite a bit. These are Baco, and they're both made by Baco. The first one I bought was an actual Baco. It's a small slip joint plier, but I liked it so much I ended up buying the Snap-on one, the next size larger. Like I said, they're identical. They're made by Baco, but this one was labeled Snap-on. The first one I bought was Baco. Here's a puller, injector puller for Volkswagen and Audi. I had to buy that special for a project last year that I had come in the shop. Transmission tail shaft plugs work good for if you're pulling the shaft, the drive shaft or whatever out. You can plug that so you don't end up with oil all over the floor. Let's see, moving up here, here's all my ratchets and 1/2 inch extensions. I like Snap-on ratchets. I'm not gonna lie, I got quite a few of them. I've got the Comfort Grip Instinct handles. I thought I'd like them because I like the Instinct handled screwdrivers, but come to find out, I think I just like the Instinct handled screwdrivers. I much prefer the standard chrome ratchets from Snap-on. So I've got the 3/8 long, 3/8 standard, 1/4 inch. This is probably one of my most used ones. I'm not sure what the part number is on this, but it's a 3/8 stubby flex head. I use the snot out of that. That's one of my favorite ratchets. Here's a 3/8 stubby rigid. And then this is one I just recently built. I took my 1/4 inch, my THLL 72. It was 1/4 inch drive, extra long flex head, and I converted it to 3/8 drive, but I did it the proper way by retaining the same end plate and just boring out the plate to accept the 3/8 drive, and kept the fasteners coming in from the top side of the head, so you didn't lose any of the durability of the ratchet. Snap-on nut driver. Most of my extensions are either Snap-on or Sunex. I have got a couple of Mac in there. These are my 1/4 inch drive. I really like these ones. These are the Matco, but they've got the knurls on them. I bought that set probably 25 years ago. I think it was even before Snap-on was putting the knurls on theirs. But Easy Red flex end ratchets. Snap-on nut drivers, Blue Point amber grip handles. I had these in the race trailer as well. Some wobbly extensions, 1/2 inch drive. I've got a few 3/8 drive ones up here, back in the back. I don't use the wobblies as much. I know people go nuts over them. I'm not as big a fan on them, but they have their place, so I do have a few of them. I also have a 3/4 inch Danaher breaker bar. My scrapers, recently bought these Matco carbide scrapers to work really well. Snap-on ones, Blue Points. Here's an old carburetor adjusting set. Works real, used the snot out of that one back when I was doing a lot of carburetor work. Had the various attachments. You could reach down underneath the body to the base plate, and then the end here's marked, so you could know if you turn it a quarter, eighth, half turn, whatever. Yeah, don't use that too much anymore, but sure did back in the day. Old Walbro kit for small engines, Zama, Zenith, Tecumseh, all the small carburetors. I got that's probably 25 years old when I went to a Briggs & Stratton class. Let's see, extension. That works good for reaching in some of these big RVs to reach in and get the air springs and everything where you can't really get to them. You can reach in and hold it with that, and you can put your impact or a regular ratchet out here. These are a fairly recent purchase. These are the same as the Mountain and Easy Red, but these have got Carlisle stamped on them. I bought the metric and the standard. I like them. They're 0 offset, but they've got the recessed on one side, reversible flex head. My only thing I don't like is they're splined. I don't know. I'm still on the fence whether I like splined or not, but they seem to work okay. But I did have a couple of places where I thought these would come in handy, so I bought a set, and then I bought another. Then I bought the SAE set, and so I've got them both. These are some Capri ultra thin wrenches. Haven't used those a ton, but I do have them now, so if I need them, I've got them. A couple of serpentine belt tools and flywheel or fan hub holding tools. Snap-on. Snap ring pliers, reversible. We got a couple of Nipex, a couple of snap-on transmission ones. Transmission, this is a Cornwell Proto transmission one. For Oetiker clamps, I've got the end, the high leverage end and side pliers, so you can reach in from the end or the side. Then there's the standard Oetiker ones. CV band tools, and then here's the one where you actually can set you tighten it up and put the right amount of, you can put a torque wrench on them. Some of them actually have torque specs. So, moving on down, this is my small bit driver and extractor drawer. So I've got a bunch of extractors for nuts, bolts, these are studs. Use the snot out of these over the years, especially on small engines, motorcycles, ATVs, for having to thread studs and everything in. Metric and SAE. Easy Red driver. It's another Mac extractors. Snap-on. Use these quite a bit. The trick on these ones, a lot of people don't like this style, but the trick on these to remember is don't drill your hole out to the largest size, because when you start tightening this in, you'll actually spread that wall out and it'll bite into the threads harder. So you want to start fairly small and use a small one of these so you've got more mass or more thickness between the bore of the drill hole and the thread. If you can use them in that application, they work really well. They also work good for pipe extractors, but I've had good luck with these. A lot of people haven't, and I think that's the key, is they're drilling that hole too big. And so you have a thin wall, and as soon as you put that in there, it wants to bite and spread out, and it's counter effective because it's biting into that wall too tight. Bunch of miscellaneous Duramax pressure. You clip this on your service port, and you can tell what your vacuum or pressure is on your Duramax system. Some various adapters I've made over the years for my case spreader for various axles. I had this one drilled and tapped a couple of different times for 8.8 Ford, and I think this was a 12 bolt GM, And then I recently did a 10-bolt GM and realized that it wouldn't work because the holes were right between them, so I had to make another set to do the 10-bolt. This is just, I believe this is a Lyle set of brake caliper hangers. Cheap, but they work. They work really well. Old set of seal drivers. That's invaluable for pulling those rubber isolators off of exhaust systems. Oh, a gas cap that I made and drilled, bored, and epoxied an adapter in so I can check, so I can pressurize a tank to check for leaks between the injection pump and the tank on Duramaxes. Holley testing tools for a power valve. You screw, damn, that's tight. You screw the power valve in there, then you put the end on, then you put your vacuum pump on it, and you can tell at what pressure your power valve would pop off at. I used to be really good at setting up Holley carburetors and knowing where the circuits overlapped, and from your enrichment circuit to your main metering circuit, setting up power valves. You can usually set it up at idle, get a reading on what kind of engine vacuum, and generally divide that in half and add a half, and that would get you really close on a power valve to where it would come on at the right vacuum of the engine for normal driving. But yet you had to be careful because one sneeze, one backfire, I guarantee you're going to blow your power valve. So you had to make sure that that was set up. One of the last things, make sure you had your timing, everything's spot on, because if you backfired anywhere, the slightest little sneeze, you'd blow the diaphragm in those power valves. So anyway, setting up those power valves was kind of an art. I enjoyed that. Also, here's the tool for setting up the valve, on like a 4160 Holley and a 4150 that had the center or the side hung floats. You could loosen the jam nut and then turn the center, kind of like an old valve adjusting tool, but you had the jam nut on the outside, and the inside was turned by the knob, so you could raise and lower your needle height, which was basically your float level. Let's see. There's my Kentmore pressure tester for checking boost hoses, intercoolers, basically checking the integrity of your intercooler and your hot pipe and your cool pipe from your turbo and everything. And there's a couple of different adapters for various diesel applications. This is, I believe, an extra long Torx bit set. And this works really well for your brake calipers. Put it in between your backing pad and your piston and ratchet it and spread your piston calipers. And then down here is another flaring tool. This is one of my old flaring tool. Your drum brake, setting up the drum brake to the brake pads, or your brake shoes. And then some old brake tools, engraver, some various different adapters and plugs for my smoker, my smoke machine. Coming over to this side, punches, Mac and Proto seem to be my go-to punches. I had Snap-on, well, I still got a Snap-on set right here. I've got this Snap-on set years ago, and I found the Snap-ons were so brittle, if you looked at them wrong, they broke. I tried the Cornwell ones. The Cornwell ones weren't brittle enough. I don't know what they put in them. It must have been a lot of, I don't know what it was, but if you could bend the Cornwell ones into a freaking pretzel. The Mac and then later Proto were the ones that I found was the perfect balance of hardness and strength. And I don't think I've ever broke a Cornwell or Matco one, or excuse me, a Matco or a Proto, Mac or Proto one. But the Snap-on ones I've broken a few, and the Cornwell ones wouldn't break, but like I said, they turn into a pretzel. So I don't have any Cornwells anymore. I got rid of them. I do have the Snap-on set. I think my son's got a Snap-on set that I give him as well. But pretty much everything in my reach is either Proto chisels or my Mac drifts and punches. I do have a set of Snap-on bronze that I really like. I got a set of Mayhew brass that is pretty nice. I've got this old set of Mac driver, and this is tapered. And then you hold a wrench on this flat and drive this one off, and it presses it off the taper. And then I got a couple different attachments for this. This works really well for driving in races deep into ring gears. And then recently I got a bronze, these are Matco, I believe. Yeah, Matco, bronze-headed long reach and a short length, or standard length, I guess, impact hammer. This bronze. These I really like. These are, they've got an odd shape. I call them like a D shape or an oval shape. These work great for driving out races and so forth out of carriers. There's 1, 2, I think they come in a 4 or 5 piece set. Yeah, so I've got a small, I got those 3 sizes, and then here's the extra long one. So I really like those. I've used the snot out of those. Here's an old, this is a Mac long drift. So again, most of my punches and so forth are going to be Mac and Proto, but I do have a few snap-on. Like I said, and these race ones are snap-on, and they actually worked out really good. But they're stubby out on the end, so there's not a lot of length for them to break. This is my hose for radiator hoses. Pulling them off. These work really well for clamps, Blue Point, and I believe these are Matco or Cornwell, and these are Blue Point for hose pinch. These are Cornwell. These work good for, these are resistance in here to clamp off hoses. They work really well. Some various hose clamp, cable operated one. Some body panel tools, cutters, interior little plastic pry bars, body hammers, I don't do as much body work as I used to, but back in the day I did quite a bit of custom painting body and building street rods and so forth. So I got a lot of these are T-dollies that I've made, a little air nozzle that I made probably 30 years ago for cooling spot welds when I was welding in rosette panels, or rosette welds onto panels. Punch a hole with a panel flanger and a pull punch. Put the panel over it, spot weld it, and then hit it with cool air. Radius gauge. These work good for separating panels. You can drive impact on the end, so you can drill out your spot welds and then get this behind the panel and drive it down with a hammer along this backside edge and separate them. That 3-piece set there has worked really well. I think that's about it. This is miscellaneous. Yeah, another pinion depth tool. My AC gauge manifold set. Some various gloves. Some bean bag and some body mallets for panel forming. But that's pretty much my toolbox in a nutshell. All right, well, that pretty much concludes the updated 2022 Z Motorsports shop and toolbox tour. So I'll put a link to the first one that was 5 years ago. I'll put a link to that one in the description, but this is a current updated one. It's been like this for the last couple of years now. I'd like to honestly say that when my son and I designed this shop and set it up with where we wanted all of our drops, our electrical outlets, how we have it laid out for our machining and fabrication quadrant, as we call it, everything into the one corner where we have everything, the way we originally laid everything out has worked out well and is very well set up for workflow. I'm glad I put the lift where I did, where it's back far enough from my benches that I can do work on the vehicle on the lift, pull an engine, do whatever I need to do there, and still have enough room in front of the vehicle between the workbenches and so forth. That was very well thought out, and I can actually pull another car in from behind while I've got a car on the lift. So I can run cars too deep on that side. Even with our Camaro parked here in the middle bay, I can pull 2 vehicles in on the one side and 1 vehicle on the other side for work. And the shop is very comfortable as far as workflow. It's cold here in northern Utah right now. We're in the mid-teens and it's comfortable in here. The heater just kicked on, but it's only kicked on a couple of times in the last couple hours, and it's comfortable in here, about 62, 63 degrees. It's usually where I keep it at for working, and it's shirt sleeve weather. So I can honestly say that I'm very glad we built the shop the way we did, laid it out the way we did, and it's been working out really well for workflow. So I appreciate you taking the time to follow along. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you've seen throughout the video that you'd like to see more of, or have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Ask them if there's something you want to see more of. Let me know in the comments. We do have some projects coming up, some personal and some side jobs that are going to be coming up that I'll be posting here in the near future, probably after the first of the year. But I want to say thank you for all my followers and the new ones especially for following along, and especially where I've had a gap there where I didn't have some videos over this last year. I hope to change that going into 2023. And thank you for watching, and if you like it, give me a thumbs up, and again, I welcome the comments. Thank you.